5 a.m., so tomorrow's the day.
Good evening, and welcome to the June Planning Board meeting. I want to call this meeting to order. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. If I could get everybody to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 is public comment, and this public comment would be on not an agenda item. This would be outside of an agenda item. So floor is open for anybody that would like to have some public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Verification and posting of the agenda.
The agenda was posted on June 5th between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. at all the locations listed on the agenda in accordance with NRS 241 and Churchill County Code.
Very good. We have a revised agenda tonight. We're going to be striking the Corkill variance that's on the agenda. So, consideration of possible action, could we have approval of the agenda as revised?
I approve the agenda as revised.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We got here. Okay, item number 6, verification and notification of all landowners in accordance with NRS and Churchill County Consolidated Development Code.
All efforts to reach landowners as required by NRS and Churchill County Code were made.
Very good. Item number 7, consideration and possible action, approval of minutes for the meeting held on May 14th, 2025 public hearing. Can I get a motion?
Tammy Etchman for the record. I approve the minutes from the meeting held on May 14th, 2025.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, moving on. Item 8, it's an action item, consideration of possible action, adoption of the 2025 update to the Carson River Floodplain Management Plan. At this point, I'll turn it over if you could come up and state your name and your address for the record, please.
Here we go. Hi there. For the record, I'm Edwin James. I'm the general manager for the Carson Water Subconservancy District. And this evening, I am planning to give you kind of an update on the Carson River Floodplain Management Plan, the 2025. This is something we've been working on for several years, updating this and ongoing. The idea behind this is really to understand flooding on a regional basis. And this is to give you some understanding of what's going on and hopefully maybe giving you ideas to incorporate into your floodplain management plan. I will say before I start that every picture you see are actually floodings that you'll see in the river or in the watershed that occurred. This was actually in '97 in Douglas County. And the road, it's hard to see, that was 395 that was inundated and kind of washed out, and then people couldn't drive for several days after this flood. Next, please. So what was the main purpose of this flood? The main purpose of the study and plan is to reduce flood risks in the watershed. We have flooding all up and down. Every region has a little different, but there is a regional issue as we move forward, and that is the goal of this plan, is really to provide you some information on how to deal with flooding and reduce your flood risk for your communities. Next, please. So the history, I'm going to give you a little brief history of how we started this. And this is with the Carson River Coalition. After the 1997 flood, the community got together and says, how are we going to start dealing with flooding? There was a real concern as we move forward. Of course, a lot of damage, but it was not as bad as what happened on the Truckee. On the Carson, we saw about $16 million worth of damage, but on the Truckee, they were over $690 million. And the reason why is because we still had our floodplains. We still had open space. Several of the farmers were impacted as they went through, but the cost of fixing their issues was quite low versus houses and businesses. And so the community got together and they said, okay, how are we going to deal with it? Do we develop a flood management group? Do we deal with other things? And what the results of that committee was, they thought, what's integrated the water resources? We have water supply issues, we have flooding issues, we have water quality, we have habitat. Why don't we bring everyone together and look at how we can deal with water, that because a flood will have impacts on water quality, on the habitat. Can we bring everyone together? And at that time, they asked the Carson Water Subconservancy District if they would take the lead in this. And that's what we do. Brenda Hunt in our office is the watershed coordinator for the River Coordination Group here, and really just trying to bring everyone together and get their insight, because we realize one entity can't do it all. It takes a group of people with different ideas to come together, and that's the goal of this. And so back, next one. So a little plan history. So back in 2003, we started working with the community again, and we got together in 2004 with a working group and said we need to have a plan of how do we start wanting to deal with the floodings. Next, please. So in 2008, we developed our first watershed plan. It really focused at that time on the river, just what happens with the flooding on the river. And this plan was adopted by Alpine County, which is in California, Douglas, Carson, Lyon, and Churchill County all adopted the plan. And again, it's just a way of understanding and suggestions of how to deal with flooding. In 2013, we did an update to that plan, just really kind of finding where we were, what happened over the last 5 years, from 2013 to 2008. And again, this plan was adopted by Alpine, Douglas, Carson, Lyon, and Churchill. In 2018, we realized we needed to expand it from just the river to the alluvial fans. And so we expanded this project to look at whether the flooding damages we're seeing down the alluvial fans and how we wanted to deal with those. And at that point, again, it was adopted by all the counties, but Story County also adopted it because they don't have flooding issues from the river, but they do have a lot of alluvial fan flooding. And so they adopted the plan. Next, please. So flooding is not new. It's been going on in the Carson for years. These are just some pictures of floods down the river and around the area. And in the Fallon area, your big flood was in 1907, flooding out the courthouse and everything out in this area. But you can also see that it was flooding around the whole area. In fact, the biggest floods were in 1862, 63, but we had very few people here, so we didn't really hear about it. But it flooded California. Sacramento was underwater and bankrupt the state of California at that time. So flooding can be a huge issue as we move forward. Next. So flooding is becoming a bigger problem as we have pressures, development pressures. We are now building in our floodplains. We are building in alluvial fan area drainages, and it's causing some more impacts. And that's something we wanted to address. We've been doing a lot of area drainage master plans in the upper watershed. These would have been great plans if we had done it 50 years ago, because we now look at all these alluvial fans and they developed these things. They forgot to keep the drainage. How do you move water from the upper watershed to the river? And so we find that now the repairs cost more than the damage that would cause by flooding. And so we are now trying to work with the communities before that happens. The other thing is also building in the floodplain next to the river. Everyone wants to be near the river. And a year like this, the river's not very large, especially in the upper watershed. But when it floods, it covers a huge area. And all of a sudden, we're now dealing with those issues. Churchill County, you guys really have encroached your floodplain over the years. You look at the housing, a lot of people are built right next to the river. So the river really can't expand when it floods. And these are issues that we're trying to address. Next, please. This is a beautiful picture of what a river looks like as it moves through, and this is in Alpine County. Next, please. So again, the idea of the plan is approach doing a regional floodplain management plan. The idea to protect the floodplains from development, because if we can do that, especially in the upper watershed, it's a far cheaper way than building flood walls or flood dams. It's also better for the habitat, the environment, and it provides water resources to the upper watershed and avoids those flood damages you would see on a watershed-wide basis. We did a study earlier that if Douglas County was to build and encroach in their floodplain, the flooding downstream in Carson, Lyon County would be significantly worse than it is today. So again, working on that regional approach really makes a difference. Now, when you get to Lahontan, your flooding is quite different than you have in the upper watershed. So we identify both of those, but again, on a regional approach is where we try to get to. Next, please. The idea, of course, is looking at a living river approach. And when you have a living river approach, you can incorporate all these other benefits that come through it. You know, water quality, wildlife habitat, floodplain management, water quantity, balancing property rights and natural resources and public safety. All these come around when you start looking at a living river approach on trying to keep the floodplains open. Next, please. So what was the main river corridor message? Next. And this was the idea of trying to keep development out of the floodplain. Again, down here, you've really kind of encroached on your floodplain, but the advantage you have is Lahontan Reservoir and also the V-line and all moving the water around. In 2017 and 2023, we had a huge amount of water coming down, facing down here, but because of that pre-planning and able to move that water, you were actually able to avoid flooding that we would have typically anticipated if we hadn't done this and moved the water out into the desert and the work you guys did with the weir and everything else. So pre-planning has really helped protect the floodplains down here. But in the upper watershed, we still have those open flooding. We have very little storage, really depends on Mother Nature. So the best way, again, to protect those floodplains is to keep them open. Next, please. So what are these suggested plans? Next. The plan has flood hazard mitigation strategies. There are 8 of them in the plan, looking at different ways to do it, protecting natural floodplain functions, looking at higher regulation standards, collecting flood data, balancing the channel migration and bank erosions, increase floodplain hazards and outreach, reduce infrastructure right next to the river. Too often we have bridges that may encroach on the river itself. How do we minimize that or have a road next to it? Looking at map and study alluvial fan studies and also minimize stormwater impacts. In these mitigation strategies, there are over 49 management strategies that we do too. Suggestive actions, we call them, of what a community may want to do to look at reducing their flooding as we move forward. Next, please. So flash floods, again, especially alluvial fans, there's just something that for the community to be aware of. One thing with flash flooding coming down, it happens really quick. There's very little resource timing to do with it. And so making the community aware where those might be is something critical in this plan that we have now identified. Next. This was interesting. This was a flash flood that came down near the Fandango movie theater that happened over a 30-minute period. The people in this car had gone in to watch the movie. It was blue skies, and when they came out, they had all this mud around their car. They weren't even aware that it occurred while they were at the movie. I hope it was a good movie. But you can just see how quickly things can change from just going nothing to all of a sudden all the sand and sediment pouring down. Next, please. So this is it. It's kind of basically a wrap-up of what we've done. It's in the past. I don't think we've presented it to the Planning Commission in the past. We've always taken it to the Commission directly, but we wanted you to understand the idea behind it, the purpose. It's a fairly lengthy document. A lot of it's just reference material, but it gives you an understanding. So when you develop your plan, this is nothing as a regulatory document, but as you develop your planning process, it's hopefully a reference material that you can use as you move forward. This here was a thunderstorm that hit in Markleyville. Caltrans had stored all their material up here because it was way above the river. This came down, it was a fire the year before and just came through. washed down a creek, washed out the road. It actually cut off Markleyville for 6 weeks, so they had to go around to get to Carson Valley. And they did not anticipate to have this kind of sediment coming down through here. So again, these are just photos of what happens and trying to be prepared. If we plan ahead and we invest $1 to mitigate, it'll save us $6 in actual damage in the future. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
Yeah, Mark Hyde for the record. So from your study, what's the minimum distance from the river to build a home? What are you recommending? Because I'm guilty of putting quite a few
Right.
homes along the river.
Well, and that happens wherever you go. In your area here, because of the river, and because of the Lahontan Reservoir, you are fairly protected. I mean, you have encroached. There are issues with the Bafford Bridge. We know, especially with sediment coming in, that has to be cleaned out periodically to move water. And so it's constantly working. We work with Lahontan Conservation District and TCID to help keep the river channel open, and so avoid the flooding issue. So your flooding situation down here is quite different than the upper watershed. We have a house that is only 50 feet away from the river. They had to elevate it, and they did. And so they are now 4 feet above the ground. And so when it flooded this last time, they were okay. However, what happened was they had a chimney fire occur. And the firemen could not get to their house because the roads were flooded. So these are things that you have to be aware of when you're planning. How far away? You know, you really need to understand what you're trying to do and accomplish. And with Douglas County, we're constantly talking with the community of keeping that open space so you're not right there. The other thing is the river wants to move. And there are places there where you now have to put riprap in the river because the river wants to erode away and take out their house. Carson City has actually bought almost all their floodplain, and now it's open space. And so they've done a really nice job on that. And so it's just really depending on where you are, community. But I think if you're 50 feet from the river, you're a little too close.
What are some of the highlights of the changes, the upgrades to your current plan versus the previous plan?
Thank you for that question. The biggest thing is really looking at stormwater, looking at low-impact development, looking at how we can do stormwater to infiltrate the water into the ground versus having it just kind of stream off down into the valley and to cause some floods. 2 years ago, Douglas County had some real problems with the pine nuts, floods coming down, and that water intercepted into several of the ditches, farmers' ditches. They're not designed for flood control. And so that caused some real problems that we had to do in the county, had to end up trying to pump water over the bridges, and they almost lost a few roads because of that. So we really wanted to focus on how do you minimize, you can't eliminate, minimize those impacts coming from alluvial fan flooding. And so that was the biggest change, really. The river hasn't changed much in our recommendations, just gathering data and making people aware of it. But really, it's stormwater drainage was the biggest change to the plan.
Any other questions or comments? Do we need a motion for this? Motion for recommendation?
Are you asking this to go to the commission still?
We would like to go to the commission because we'd like to have adopt, again, it's awareness, and really the idea behind this plan is if people are aware they're flooding, that's what we want to do.
So at this point, we would need to, pardon me? Oh, yeah, sorry. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask the board for a motion, for a recommendation, or not.
Joe Frey for the record, Mr. Chair. I move that we recommend the Carson River Floodplain Management Plan to the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend the Carson the Carson Floodplain Management Plan to the Board of County Commissioners. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Moving on. Old business. A, consideration and possible action, review of a special use permit, SUP 001064 for a crop processing facility previously granted to Paul Huvier of Bench Creek Ranch Company LLC on May 10, 2023. The property is located at 12417 Fitz Lane, Assessor's parcel number 009-071-40. A condition for approval was annual review until the Planning Commission determines it is no longer necessary. Is there anyone here to represent the Bench Creek Ranch? Okay, seeing none, I'll pass it on to Planning Department.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Randy Hines, Public Works Planning and Building. So again, you stated that this was an approved SUP back in May of 2023. Last year's review of it, all the conditions were met minus the landscape. Staff actually went out there this week and visited the site. The landscape has been installed and accepted by the department. So at this time, all the conditions have been met for this SUP.
Okay, put it up to the board for any questions or comments.
Yeah, so we'll just recommend that they don't need to come back anymore.
Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for whether we need to consider this or drop it from the annual review.
Mr. Chair, Joe Freight for the record. I move that we no longer require an annual review of the SUP with the number previously stated.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, moving on. B, consideration and possible action on review of a special use permit, SUP 001091 for a multi-tenant business complex previously granted to Rigoberto Urbe and Maria Herrera of Desert Properties, RUS, on June 12, 2024. Property is located at 5070 Reno Highway, Assessor's parcel number 008-5310-90. A condition for approval was annual review until the Planning Commission determines it is no longer necessary. I see we have some representatives. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and your address, you'll have to push the red button and it'll turn green and then let us know.
Maria Herrera.
Rigoberto Uribe.
It's for 5070 Reno Highway.
This over to Planning Board. Yes, Randy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Randy Hines again for the record. So again, this site had, or this application had quite a few conditions of approval on it. At the beginning, there was quite a few building improvements needed to be done, more specifically for ADA, bathrooms, and firewalls, because there are three separate. There's one building, but it's divided into three separate buildings. All those improvements were put in, approved by the building department and the fire department. So they needed to get that done so they could start doing business. So as far as the building, all those conditions of approval have been completed. There are several that are still outstanding, more specifically the requirements that NDOT has. They have to have. Right now, there's a wide approach coming into the building. You can kind of pull into the entire front. NDOT wants them to fence that off and have one entrance, paved access on the west side of the building. That has not been done yet. The coordination with the state regarding the water system has not been done yet. There's a single well for the parcel, and it needs to be coordinated with the state as far as if it meets like community well, right? Public water system, because it's a multi-tenant facility. And then the other one is for the septic system. Right now, that septic system's a pretty small septic system, so as you get a multi-tenant facility in there, the septic system really needs to be upgraded. So, as it sits today, none of those have been completed yet. Just a note that they've inquired to actually split the large easterly portion of the building into 3 sections, but staff really recommends that all these improvements of the existing SUP could be completed prior to any expansion of that. So, and with that, I can answer any questions.
Yes, ma'am, would you have anything to add to that or comments?
Dice que de lo que le había dicho, que habíamos arreglado todo lo que era del agua, todo eso. Que falta el agua, lo séptico y la... Yeah. Okay, so we're, our contractor that we hired is working with the NDOT, and he talked to, I don't know who he's working with, but they said that they were he's waiting for a letter because, for the improvements, what has to be made. And, same with the water. I talked to a lady, she's supposed to get back to me, and I haven't gotten back to her yet. And as for the septic, well, we plan to do everything, hopefully this summer.
Okay. Members of the board?
Tammy Etchman for the record. So with you looking forward to have that done this summer, is all your timelines you think will be done?
Well, we had some financial, unexpected, but we are planning to do it this year, so to finish by the end of the year.
So with a review a year out, do you think that a year is a good time for you to be able to complete the items?
Que si te dan un año, te puedes quedar. Yes.
Joe Frey, for the record, this would be for the planning department. Is the continued subdivision of the building to the east there, would that be a new special use permit, or would that still fall under this existing special use permit that's in question?
It would fall under the existing special use permit, but like we said before, all these other major things need to get finished. So Randy mentioned that the fire and building code stuff has been completed. That was pretty much done about the time of the permit approval last year. So it's been this last year, and so I just want to keep everybody's attention on the fact that not much progress has been made, and so it is really important that the rest of this gets done right away so that the building can operate safely and in a sanitary manner.
Well, last year, our contractor got a big job, so he kind of put it to the side. So we had to wait for him to finish that, and then winter came, and it kind of put everything on hold. But we are working with him again, and we plan to do this as soon as possible to finish.
Okay, so Joe Frey, for the record, my follow-up question would probably be for Mr. Sanford then at that point. Because I think it's completely reasonable to say we probably don't want more tenants in the building until septic, road access, all of that stuff is complied with. But the question here is mostly just to require another inspection of the SUP a year from now. So how do we incorporate that in, or do we incorporate that in at all?
So at this time, you would just be making a motion to continue the special use permit as it presently exists, subject to continued inspection for all required conditions, and that no expansion occur unless and until the conditions have been met.
Yeah, just a question. So we have three things that are outstanding. First is the approach that NDOT's requiring.
Yeah.
Second would be a well that would be of public well.
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to get back on that
Okay, and the third thing would be a proper size septic
septic.
system. And so are you saying that that will be finished within
Well-
the year? I mean, if we were to extend this another year, all that would be done?
Yes, we have finished.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff Goings for the record. So I just want to kind of go back, because I was on the board when we approved this, and there was some reasons why we hustled this through, because you had some tenants that had leased and done some things. So
Yes.
in my view of this, I don't see where we can allow you to expand on your building or on your tenants until these conditions are met.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, in my opinion, I think that's probably going to be the opinion of the board, is that we're going to want to have this annual review. And I think what everybody's trying to do here is figure out, are we kicking this down the road longer and longer?
Yeah.
We're going to do it another year, and, I would probably recommend that you guys get those items corrected and taken care of.
Que no puedes extender los otros porque, o sea, tener más gente hasta que ya acabes todo lo demás. Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
This question is for Dean. If we were to shorten it to 6 months to see if there's anything done within 6 months, is that something that would help this?
That would keep an impetus to keep moving on the project instead of letting it wait for another year and then suddenly deciding, oh, I need to do something. I think that would probably help
best.
with that. So I guess my recommendation is that the applicant needs to start having all their applications with the state and getting those applications completed, or at least close. But then you still have the construction side, new septic system, field, some interior changes for the public water system, whatever the state might be needing, and then of course changes along the highway frontage to separate the parking lot from the driving lanes.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to a motion for either approval or however we want to go about this.
Tammy Etchman for the record. I move that we review this application in 6 months with progress to be made and no other tenants or additions to the existing structures or businesses.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve or extend the approval of the SUP for 6 months review with no additional tenants or occupants until the next 6 month review. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Moving on. Item C, consideration and possible action, review of a special use permit, SUP 001-093, for a personal training service and classes business granted to Dan Mueller on June 12, 2024. The property is located at 5070 Reno Highway, assessor's parcel number 008-531-90. A condition for approval was annual review until the planning commission determines it is no longer necessary. For those that weren't on that, this would be one of the tenants from, okay, very good. Can I get your name and address, please?
Yes, it's Dan and Kimberly Muller, and the business address is 5070 Reno Highway.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Randy Hines for the record. Again, this, like Vice Chair Going stated, this is the west portion of the building tenant. This applicant was the ones kind of, kickstarting all the improvements to the building and getting this going because he really wanted to get his business going and get it opened up. They've actually met all the conditions of their approval, and we recommend that they no longer need to come.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good, Chairman.
Okay. Open it up to the board. Any questions, concerns? Public comment? Can't be that easy, can it? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Tammy Etchman for the record. I move to no longer require an annual review for this application.
Second?
Okay. Motion carries 4-0. 4-0. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item, which was item D, has been struck from this agenda. So we will now move on to item E. Consideration and possible action regarding a special use permit SUP 25-000011 for crop processing and storage filed by Alex Pedden. The property is located at 1450 McLean Road, assessor's parcel number 008-731-04, consisting of 6.31 acres in the A5 zoning district. The applicant proposes to convert a vacant grain handling facility into a wood pellet production facility. The application includes a request to be considered similar to grain processing rather than timber processing. This item was tabled at the May 14th, 2025 meeting. And I see the representatives here. Alex, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Alex Peden, 1450 McLean Road.
Okay, Director Hines?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, Randy Hines for the record. Before we start with the discussion on the applicant's presentation, we're asking the board to actually make a decision on whether this use is similar to crop processing or timber processing before we get into the discussion. So again, we'd just rather have that decision made now than do all the presentation and make it later.
Could you guys give us a brief description of what timber processing is in our codes?
So there's not a definition in there for timber processing. So the way it was determined through staff was that the timber processing is when timber logs are getting brought into a facility being processed into dimensional lumber or engineered lumber or anything like that. And that was kind of staff's determination of that definition. So hence why it's more into the industrial area, not in commercial or ag land. So.
Okay. Does the applicant have anything to help support that decision that we're trying to make here?
Yeah, I did contact the facility in Pennsylvania. There really isn't a whole lot around here. In fact, when I also contacted Chris at the Business Environmental Program at UNR, they don't even have anything on record that shows any kind of pellet processing or manufacturing in Nevada. So this is like the one guy that actually talked to me. I also contacted another one in Maine. They never called back either. But Anyways, in Chris in Pennsylvania, Chris had purchased the exact same hammer mill and pellet presses that I would be using. There is a slide, but I believe it's the second one in. But he runs pelletized alfalfa and kibble through the hammer mill that has very little to no moisture content, and then adds blends of vitamins, minerals, and medications to it. After that, he adds water, and then to get it to the right moisture, scoops the mix into the pellet press. Chris did mention that the hammer mill is very loud and dusty. However, he did say to prevent the dust, all he had to do was put a shop vac filter. He just 3D printed like a flange on top of the Vortex, put a shop vac filter on it, and then just simply ran duct tape, I believe the aluminum adhesive, to cover up all the holes and stuff in the hammer mill. And he said after that, he'd never had a dust problem. And he also said that this hammer mill is right in the middle of his shop where, he has workers all around. He also is looking at just putting a hush house around it as well. But, and then the hammer mill itself doesn't produce any dust, but it just goes to show that, he's literally processing a crop through the same exact equipment that I would be using. Also, I've even looked at, like I kind of mentioned last time, processing corn stalk to make wood pellets. And so even then, adding that just to add to it.
Mr. Chairman, I think Randy's suggestion was that we ought to have a discussion right now to see if pelletizing wood is similar to crop processing. And I'd like to address that and have that discussion before we have everyone else involved.
You're doing great.
Is that okay?
Keep going. Yeah, I just wanted the applicant to be able to.
So Alex, I went to your place, looked at the operation. I was under the assumption, when we came to the meeting last month, that they were similar, that crop processing was similar to wood processing. There were a couple of statements by the public and some things written. And I want you to know that I've been at least 30 years in developing, and so I know all the opposition that can come when you have a project. And a lot of those opposition is, don't do it in my backyard. And we usually can overcome that. But there were some oppositions last time that caused me to pause. And I realized that I wasn't well informed enough to make a decision. And so I studied. And I've studied off and on since our last meeting. When we talk about, and here's what I want to say to the commission and to the public, when we talk about timber, as long as we're growing a tree, it's farming. But as soon as that timber falls down, everything downstream is industrial. And the reason, it's not because of similarity about the mechanics. Like you said, we can have a hammer mill that does exactly the same to corn stalks or to grain that we do with wood. The mechanics are very similar. The difference is the substance. That's what's different. And so what happens is we have what's called VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds. And they actually can dissipate in the air into a gas form very quickly from any of the kind of processing that takes place with wood. I checked with 8 of our neighboring states. Not one state of our neighbors, no county or state, has ever put wood processing in an ag environment. When we process agricultural products, that substance is a lot different in terms of the kind of emissions that it'll off-put. Yes, you can have some grain processing that can emit VOCs, but they're very low. And with wood, the VOCs are high enough, very easily high enough, to where it requires Title V of the Clean Air Act, which means we now have Department of Environmental Protection. And I wanted to say a few of those notes I put down here The VOCs that I'm talking about, they originate naturally in wood, like terpenes, methanol, formaldehyde. They're released during heating or drying or grinding. They're invisible but harmful in high concentrations. They contribute to ground level ozone and smoke formation, and they are regulated under the Clear Air Act. I was thinking about how small your process is, and you might successfully be able to show that your emissions are underneath Title V requirements. You might be able to slip under until you have an event, a fire, something that could happen where your emissions well exceed that. If it were to be approved here, we probably would make sure that it would have somewhat kind of like the same regulation that Title V has. In addition to those VOCs, what I came across was PAHs. PAH is a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. There's 100 of them, at least. And that's a byproduct of incomplete combustion of wood, for example. So anytime we bake it, heat it, but we don't burn it, we have those emissions. Now, like I said, you can maybe prove that your emissions are under a certain level until there's a certain incident. My bigger problem is, why put this in ag? This is really industrial. It's not similar because it's a different substance. And so in an ag zoning, we have a lot of benefits because of ag. People like to come to this area because of the expansive agriculture. And we don't like to have little pieces of industrial activities within this beltway of farming. I think there's some unintended consequences if we allow an industrial activity into an ag zone. For example, neighbors become quite used to complaining about noise or complaining about odors. And pretty soon, the Latins won't be able to bell at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or pretty soon there'll be dairy air is just too noxious, and so we got to shut it down. And so I want to firmly stand with ag and say this, when that tree falls down, everything we do to timber is no longer similar. It's not similar. And it ought to stay in industrial. Our goal as a commission is to create zoning areas and to create language that's very clear. And we don't have to come to these meetings and try to figure out how we can make exceptions. So I don't think it fits. I think it needs to be an industrial area. And I could say a lot more, but I've studied this long enough to know that I'm standing on pretty firm ground to say it's not ag. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah. Finish with the board first, yes.
Tammy Edgman for the record. Like Mark, since I tabled it at the last meeting, I have done my due diligence to research it as well, and I stand firm as well that it belongs in industrial. Great idea, great concept.
Joe Frey for the record. I took a little bit of a different approach. I do believe it is similar to crop processing, but I also believe it is more similar to timber processing in the way our codes are written. And how I came to that conclusion is, I mean, I do believe that this is an objective decision here. This is not a clear cut and dry, and I think that the staff did a good job, really, in determining that it is similar to crop processing. The only thing that I think would delineate it is, if you were, in my opinion, if you were growing your own trees, harvesting them, you would be processing your crop. And at that point, I think this would be totally valid to be in that area. Anyway, so for that, I'm kind of leaning towards the side of this is definitely more similar to timber processing than crop processing.
I'd just like to ask too, Commissioner Hyde, you do own agricultural land, and could this be a conflict of interest?
Would this be a conflict?
Yeah.
Would this be a conflict of interest?
Yes.
The only way I could construe this to be a conflict of interest is if I could see that ag rights and privileges were being eroded. You know, salt loses its savor by being mixed with other contaminants. And so I'd like to see the ag zoning not mixed with industrial. So the only conflict of interest is I am interested in keeping ag. But in terms of being able to make a decision on this commission, do I have a conflict of interest? In terms of making an informed decision, no. Yeah, thank you.
And I'd also just like to state also the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I think a lot of us are falling under. You know, it's a well-documented phenomenon where individuals with limited knowledge or experience in a particular area tend to overestimate their understanding or expertise. In the context of these meetings, it seems that some concerns stem from misunderstanding about how such operations are regulated and what safeguards are in place. Most susceptible people to this are ones that actually think that they know everything about the subject. Now, I don't exclude myself from this possibility, as we're all susceptible to gaps in our knowledge. But, you know, as far as like the VOCs and everything, even the, the Business Environmental Program at UNR, not even they could come up with enough VOCs that it would fall under, was the Title V. They said there's just not enough, and I wouldn't be producing enough either. They honestly stated VOCs weren't like one of their least of their worries.
Jeff Goings for the record. So I'm going to stand where I was previously. I see this as a start point for this business, what he's trying to do here. I think the conditions were in place to get a start and allow this business to see if it can even get a foothold. If it got that foothold before it could go to these extremes that we're talking about, at that point, it would then move to an industrial, it'd have to move to an industrial area. And so when it came back down to it, my thought process is if we're making pellets out of grain or corn stalk or whatever we're making pellets out of, or are we making it out of wood chips? At this level, I saw it as as we like to call it, an incubator of a business to get it established and potentially going. If it failed, he's not out all of the infrastructure that he needs to build to support the silos and the grain processing stuff that is existing. If it does become successful, then he would have the revenue to be able to start that process. I think we're looking at that, in some cases, I think we're looking at this as a big, huge business venture where really it is, in my opinion, is a start to potentially get to a larger process. So that's why, in my opinion, I saw it as a pellet processing, I think same as planning department did as well. And I'll just leave it at that. And I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to have the board make a decision as to whether they agree with this being closer to a pellet processing or wood processing. And that would determine whether we move forward from here, correct?
Yes, that is correct. It's just because one's an allowed use and one is a prohibited use, so.
So for the public's understanding, the way our code is written, when we make a determination of what is allowed in a particular zone, it is based off what the described use is most similar to. So if this is considered most similar to a timber processing plant, then in that situation, it would be a prohibited use in this zone, and this commission would not have the jurisdiction or authority to grant it a special use permit in any fashion. If you determined it was closest to a crop processing unit, it would be allowable under a special use permit. In that situation, you would take evidence and provide conditions or determine whether or not it was allowed at all. Based off of what your discussion is here, I think the request from the planning department is, rather than go through all the potential conditions that might theoretically arrive, if this board decided it was going to be timber processing and it was therefore prohibited, there was no value in going through those conditions because regardless of the conditions, it is prohibited. So I think that was the intention, and that way the public could understand where you were coming from in that time. So if you want to go public comment, that would be.
Is there any other comment or questions from the board? Okay, I would now open it up to public comment. Please come forward, state your name and address, and you'll see the flashing red light right there. Just press that button and until it turns green. And then just so the public knows, we'll have everybody on a 3-minute public comment, and your time will start once you get going. Thank you.
At least it's green.
And just for the public, please make that public comment to us and not to the applicant, okay? Because, yeah, there we go.
Terrence McGowan, 4511 Alcorn Road. We have adjacent property zone the same. I don't think that his application for a special use permit fits the zoning period. And if you approve it, then I'll be happy because you just rezoned my property and I can do a lot of other things on it. Thank you.
So I'm Julie Jadowski Lynch. I live at 3580 Bottom Road. I was fortunate enough to have a client tell me about this that was going on. And when you do the research, and I did do a lot of research on it, sawdust is a group 1 carcinogenic. So with that being said, to try and keep this under 3 minutes, if he's going to do anything from everything that I saw, by EPA, he's required to have everything done before he even breaks ground, touches one thing on the property. So I think all of that needs to be taken into consideration. And when I was here last week and I looked at them, I was thankful that there wasn't all of these emissions involved, thinking that I knew that already. And when I went and did research on it and found out otherwise, I really felt that due diligence was not done on your side of the board. And I'm thankful, Mr. Hyde, that you did go and do research and see, because I spent several days looking and reading. And being that it is a group 1 carcinogenic, cancer does run in my family. And knowing that small particles with the Nevada wind could blow it 10 miles or more, and nobody would know that they're taking it in, and being our city is downwind, how could that possibly affect our city as well as everybody else and the inhabitants? So I'm just trying to keep this short. And I just feel that when things like this come up, bigger areas need to know about it all, because we don't know about it all. And like I said, my biggest issue, it is a group 1 carcinogenic, and that really needs to be looked at. And because he is making money with it, it is considered industrial. It's not considered agricultural at that point, in my opinion, from all the research that I've done and looked at it. Thank you.
Dennis. Green is go? Okay. Dennis Adair, 1025 Rosewood Drive. I submitted a letter for the previous meeting along with several others, and hopefully by now you guys have all had a chance to look at it and see what's in there, so won't rehash any of that. But I want to begin by citing wood pellet facility concerns identified across the nation and at multiple pellet processing sites. Concerns include, and Mark mentioned some of this, particulate matter, noise, black carbon, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, volatile organic compounds, chemical leachings, methanol, acrolein, formaldehyde. Along with that, decreased property values and the polycystic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are carcinogenic. The planning department, having done their research on this matter, failed to discuss almost all of these concerns in their reporting. Rather, they chose to cherry pick their information and essentially base their findings on minimizing the potential noise and dust. Had the planning department thoroughly researched this topic, they would have found the same available research findings that those of us in the audience found. A thorough investigation would have identified these concerns and included a planning department assessment of those concerns, and each would have been reviewed to determine what mitigation efforts and safety measures would need to be established and measurement methodology implemented to assure these issues did not rise to the level of endangering surrounding citizens and properties. There's enough information available nationally that cites related problems that this board cannot simply approve this industry based on an elementary and incomplete planning department report. There must be a verifiable method to measure all of these pollutants against established verifiable national guidelines. Equipment necessary to measure all of these pollutants must be in place prior to startup and monitor on a frequent basis until a solid pattern of compliance with those guidelines is clearly demonstrated. Thank you.
Katie McGowan. So according to the IRS, the classification of wood pellet manufacturing is under the North American Industry Classification System under Code 32199, which is all other miscellaneous wood products manufacturing. Also, according to Churchill County Code, definition of agriculture operations, all agriculture, horticulture, viticulture, and vegetable producing operations of the soil, milk and dairy, poultry and livestock, cane, or any other operation involving the growing of crops for sale for the support of other persons or animal life. Also under general provisions, I won't read the right to farm for everything, but this is the Churchill County Code. It says farming includes, but it's not limited to, the raising of crops, livestock, and shall also include the right to use the land for feed storage, feedlots, grazing by farm animals and dairy operations, sale of agriculture products from the land on which it is produced, and the transportation of agriculture products to and from a farm, ranch, or dairy. And I switched off. And the right to farm all lands is recognized to exist as a natural right. It's permitted use everywhere in the county except where prohibited under this title.
Good evening. Linda Holland, 1055 Rosewood Drive. Just to reiterate some of the statements that have been made, this is not a grain processing. Extensive research available on wood pellet processing facilities would refute this idea. This is not a dust and noise issue. Wood pellet production facilities produce emissions of harmful particulate matter, airborne pollutants, and degradation of local water quality. Dust and air pollution would cause significant health problems for people living nearby, including asthma, respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, maternal health issues, neurological disorders, and even cancers. The hammer mill, pellet press, and pellet coolers all emit volatile organic compound pollutants. And unless this facility is hermetically sealed and encased in soundproofing, simply minimizing dust and noise is not acceptable and will affect the quality of life of those living nearby. Minimal emissions are not the same as no emissions, which are the conditions we currently live under in that area. And I just want to address this clean air, Class 2 clean air quality permit. In his letter, he says his initial onset production would be 300 to 1,500 pounds per day. At the onset production of 300, that's 108 tons per month. And if he reaches his maximum production without any additional improvements or equipment, that would be 1,800,000 pounds per month, which is 6,400 tons per year, which exceeds the Class 2 air quality operating permit. So I would ask to preserve and protect agricultural and rural Churchill County, preserve and protect the environment and the health of Churchill County. And additionally, if everyone remembers in the past when the dairy popped up, since the closure of the dairy, we are there first. And we would ask your consideration in our favor. Thank you.
Good evening, Connor Getch, 701 Danny Street. Mr. Hyde, I'd like to just say that I agree with your assessment of the industrial permit. Everything downstream of growing these trees falls into the industrial category. And you also already addressed the VOCs, the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, formaldehyde. So I don't believe there is any room to classify this as similar to grain production. We've already heard everyone here talk about the EPA permits, Clean Air Act, Clean Water, different permits that would be required for federal agencies if we were doing these, if we were to allow a pellet production. Secondly, I do believe this would create kind of a slippery slope if we start rezoning ag land or just saying similar to use. What's to stop other industries from coming in and creating more noise and more dust and other just unwanted land use there? Thank you.
Hi, Amber Sanchez. It's 4007 Cimarron Road. My point is, you mentioned you're interested in incubating a business. With all due respect, I don't believe it's your job to incubate a business. I believe it's your job to protect the zoning that as it's zoned currently, which is agricultural/residential and not industrial. So I just wanted to point that out. And we are agricultural/residential and not industrial. However, I have a feeling that there are movements underfoot that perhaps want to make that industrial at some point, and this might be the Campbell's nose under the tent. And I want to prevent that. I don't want that to become industrial. So I'm keeping my eye on y'all. I just want you to know that. I'm going to go to your meetings. And the other point I wanted to make was grinding up alfalfa with a hammer mill is a whole lot different than grinding up wood. Wood would be a whole lot more, create a lot more noise than would grinding alfalfa into pellets. So, into sawdust to make the pellets. Big difference. And I wanted to point that out. So, we're not an industrial area. We didn't buy into an industrial area. And I want the community listened to. I want our concerns listened to, not just the person who made the application for the permit, but the people who are going to be affected, because I don't believe any of y'all live in that neighborhood. I know the applicant does not live in that neighborhood, but we do. So we're here pleading with you, hat in hand, to say, please listen to us. We do not want an industrial business, manufacturing plant in our agricultural area. We're the residents there. We live with it. You're not going to. That's my point. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Beanne Latin, 1955 McLean Road.
Thank you.
Okay. Beanne Latin, 1955 McLean Road. I wish to ask you to please know that this is not agriculture. And I recognize that we are given kind of special,
So, yep, okay, there you go.
They-
Yeah.
The Planning Commission has been very kind to us, but as we were going through some of our processes, they wanted to be very sure that they didn't set a precedent that would open up things to change, the agriculture business. And I'm afraid that that's something that might happen. If we allow this, what else are we going to allow? Let's keep agriculture, please. And there is such a difference between processing wood and grains and alfalfa. It's a different process, and we ask that you please do not allow this in our agriculture community. And I appreciate your concern with keeping our community agriculture. Thank you.
Gotta love my mom. Well, Jeff, I never thought I'd get up in public and say, wow, I think you're a bleeding heart. Very soft-hearted, and I appreciate wanting to make a business grow. Like, part of my heart is like that too. I'm like, what a great idea. The problem is nothing about the business. We have 3 zones in Churchill County that are wood processing. This one isn't one of them. And I think we all know it is industrial, it is not ag. And although we may want to do the right thing and help someone, that's not our job, that's not our call. Our call is, what are the zones and what are they meant for? We have 3 wood processing zones. This is not one of them. This is ag. It needs to stay ag. Thank you.
Ma'am, would you mind stating your name for the record, please?
Oh, being Bian Lattin's daughter doesn't count. I'm Laura Lee Christensen, and do you need to know where I live?
Yes, please.
1751 Latin Road.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Upham, 3618 Bottom Road, and I just wanted. Okay, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that, and thank you, Mr. Hyde, for doing that research. Timber processing is very, very different from ag processing, and I had hoped that in the last month you could have come back, or there could have been more science done to support or counter this. But I feel like we're back in the same argument that we were last month. I don't think that there's been enough science or assessments done as to what timber processing would do to the air quality or to the soil quality. And in doing so, I know that people know what inversions are, but with inversions, you're keeping, unfortunately, small particulate matter close to the ground, close to where we have people farming, and this almost seems like a recipe for disaster when you've got, this small particulate matter being put into the air, and then we have ag, which the inversion layer keeps that particulate matter just close to the ground and, unfortunately affecting any residents or the people working outside. So I'm against this, mostly because the health aspects of this have not been sufficiently assessed. And I sort of feel like, we're here again, and it should have been addressed. More science needed to be brought to the table before approving this. I also wonder where Chris's farm is, because it doesn't say that it's in an industrial zone or an agricultural zone. But if this is our one example of something similar, it would be nice to know where this Pennsylvania facility is and what it is actually zoned. So, for health aspects, I think that I would say err on the side of caution, and let's not have this done in an agricultural zone.
Let me see if I can knock it off the table too. Good evening, everyone. Well, first, when I saw this coming on your agenda,
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, Ben Shawcroft, 4197 Magnolia Road. So yeah, we are a neighbor. When I first saw this coming up, I usually don't like to oppose businesses and development. I think it's fantastic. Everybody should be given every chance to make it, in this world, and especially in this community. And so I applaud that 100%. I guess my only concern is that we're putting this where they're proposing it. And I don't know if you're planning on, if it makes it past this first round, if you're going to open it up for public comment again, but I'm going to give you everything I've got at this point. I agree that this is not similar to crop processing. It's more related to timber, and therefore should not be allowed in this zoning area. However, if the Planning Commission does go down that road and open it up for a possible special use permit, the concern I have is having looked at many of these in the years past, when I see a long list of conditions trying to mitigate the potential impact of a proposed use, that to me is a red flag that it probably shouldn't be there. If you're proposing a use that doesn't require a lot of conditions, then it sounds like you're in the right area. And so that just says, hey, if we have to make so many conditions to try to make this compatible, then the surrounding area is not compatible with that proposed use. And I also want to just address real quickly, 53 seconds, the issue of trying to support it small and then allowing it to grow and then move it. That is very, very difficult to do. Because then you'd be back and you try to have to figure out at what point does it trigger requiring the applicant to move. At what level of noise, at what level of use does that trigger that? And therefore you're going to be having more hearings in front of you trying to figure out maybe he doesn't want to move, maybe he thinks he's still small enough, and therefore it just goes, and you're just perpetuating a problem that just keeps going. Whereas you can solve it right now, and it'll never have to come back in front of you if you put it where it should be, and that's industrial. Thank you.
Jeff Marshall, 4110 Bottom Road. Oh, sounds like Mike's working here. Anyway, I'll make it real simple. I don't want to hear any noise 24/7. I don't want any more dust. We already have enough dust in Churchill County from the wind. And I wasn't aware of the pathogen problems that it could emit. And our health is more important than anything. And I want to thank Mark Hyde for doing extensive search and research on one single topic for Churchill County. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Mike Brown, 1100 Rosewood Drive, and I'm against this, and I hope that you guys are too. If you do pass this, then you're setting a precedence, and what else is going to come into that area? We bought land in that area and built our houses there, planning to live there for the rest of our lives. And if you put this kind of stuff in there in our backyard, that is going to diminish the price of our houses. We might have a hard time selling them if we decide to get out. And I just, if you folks want to move in that area, and that'd be great. Thank you.
Hello, Brian Wilkerson, 4200 Elkhorn Road. And I didn't come with a prepared statement or anything. I've just been listening to the proposals and some of the other people's statements. And I just want to let you know, I grew up, my first job was working in the timber industry. I was a logger. I'm aware of what goes on in the timber processing. I went from logging to working in the sawmills. I've been around hammer mills, chippers, wood processing. It's very noisy, very dusty. I left the sawmills, I went to work for a biomass power plant. Same process, chipping, hammer mills, a lot of dust, a lot of pollution. And I'm not into agriculture. I don't know a lot about the grain processing, but there is a totally big difference between a wood chip and a corn stalk. It's going to take a lot more noise, a lot more dust to process wood than it does agricultural products. And so I'll leave it at that. I think it's not even a close comparison. When I worked in those facilities, they were considered industrial, not agricultural. Thank you for your time.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to cut it off at the public comment side. So now the applicant, I'm going to allow you to, to respond to some of these points that were made.
Now, as far as the agriculture, and working on countless amounts of farming equipment myself, I can honestly say the farming equipment leaks a lot of oil and stuff, also polluting the ground and everything with agriculture. And also, cows put off, I think, one of the most abundant amounts of methane than anything. Also, the stuff that it takes required to run a dairy and stuff, baling and all that, also produce volatile organic compounds. So I don't know if any of that's really pertinent towards, it's I forgot what I was going to say, but it's relative to it. But I think we also got to look at the bigger picture. Also, I don't know if baking pies and manufacturing pies and selling them to the public on agricultural land is that part of manufacturing as well? I don't know.
We grow the berries.
You make pies?
Yeah, we grow this stuff.
Hey, I'll grow I'll grow some trees on it. I'll cut them. I got a couple trees. But and then just like, I don't know if anybody came here on horse and buggy, but just our cars are putting so much amount of emissions in the air, but no one's complaining about that. It's like, I think if this is what's going to bring Fallon to doomsday, I think we got bigger problems.
Okay, board, any other comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, except for I'm going to make a point here. There was a point about that I'm keeping my eye on you, and I'm going to attend some more meetings. So we encourage that. Honestly, we do, okay? What I find though, is everybody says that, and the next meeting, there'll be one person sitting back there, or the two applicants, okay? So second thing is, this is not our job. I have a job. We volunteer to do this. Well, I guess we don't, actually, we do volunteer, we're appointed, okay? So I want you to understand that. And so as a business person in this community, I'm trying to find avenues to open up for my grandkids to have a way to make a living in this community without having to depend on a business that I started or any other. And that's my goal when I sit up here. So when I gave you my opinion, that is my opinion of what I saw at this time. And everybody on this board has their own opinion. So I want you to understand that. And I do hope to see you more at these meetings. Okay, very good. Glad to hear that. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, Mark Hyde for the record. I make a motion that wood pelleting or wood processing is not similar to crop processing and therefore should not be in agricultural zoning.
I second Tammy Hitchman for the record.
Okay. I'm not going to reread that motion because I didn't have time to write it down. So I'm going to open it up to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Motion carries 3-1. Very good. Thank you, Alex. Again, thank you, public, for coming and showing up and being here, because it's very important. If you're not here, we don't know what route to take. So it's very important that you be here and let us know where we're headed. Okay, moving on. What are we to, new business? Yep, okay, new business. Consideration and possible action regarding an application for variance. Excuse me, I'm gonna let things kind of die down here just a little bit first, yeah. Okay. Consideration of possible action regarding an application for variance VAR 25-000006, filed by Kelly Workman. The property is located at 5744 Indigo Drive, assessor's parcel number 008-113-57, consisting of 30.2 acres in the A5 zoning district. The applicant proposes to waive the paved road requirement for the future parcel map. If you could both state your name and your address for the record, please. Yep, touch the red light and do, yep.
I know, but are we giving the address that we're here about, or our personal position?
Yeah, either one is fine, yeah, but yeah, we just need to get you.
Kelly Workman, 5808 Workman Road.
Trey Workman, 5235 Rivers Edge Drive.
Okay. And I'm going to pass it on to Planning Department. And Dean, if you could bring us up to speed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Dean Patterson, Public Works and Planning, for the record. So the applicant is proposing a variance from the parcel map road paving requirement for a parcel map at a later date. Pardon me. The creation of new lots requires frontage on a publicly maintained road or the construction or upgrading of a road reaching to the new lots. And when new lots are 20 acres or less, the road must be paved. So that's the situation that's being proposed. The future parcel map will take the existing 30-acre parcel and split it into 10-acre lots so that its 3 joint owners can each have their own lot. The county code would require a paved road reaching from the new lots to a publicly maintained road. The difficulty for the owners is that the nearest publicly maintained road is Dillon Road, which is approximately 1,300 feet directly south. It's the partial line on the south, on the bottom of the image. So directly south through the adjacent property. The problem is that there is no access easement through that property, so that means this, the nearest point of connection is at the intersection of Dillon Road and Roberson Lane. So basically it forces a circuitous route down, it doesn't look like it's named, but the east-west road there that's being pointed out is Indigo Drive, and then south on Roberson. So because of that, it greatly increases the cost of the land division. Approving their request for a gravel-only road would reduce the cost to be more manageable. There are other options that are summarized in the staff report that don't require a land division, namely the allowance for second or more permanent dwellings, which are allowed on very large lots, but the applicants really do want their own parcels. The staff report also summarizes the existing road condition and what improvements would be needed for meeting the county road standards. In short, Roberson Lane would need to be reshaped and rebuilt, and Indigo Drive would need fairly minor upgrading. If the variance is denied, the roads would have to be paved. My apologies, something got me. The staff report reviews the variance criteria. Criteria 1 and 2 address having some exceptional situation and imposing an exceptional practical difficulty. So the variance needs to demonstrate how the specific instance is different from all other projects. Staff regularly gets inquiries from landowners similar to this one, asking about dividing land away from the public roads, and we tell them that they need to meet the road requirements, most often paving the road to meet a publicly maintained road. Examples include the areas off of Trento Lane, Soda Lake Road, and Lucas Road. To prove this variance, the situation should be different from those. The exceptional situation results from the circuitous route needed to get around the development to the south in order to reach Dillon Road. As noted before, a road directly south to Dillon would be less than half the distance of the circuitous route, being about, if there was an easement through that property, the paved road requirement would be roughly 1,300 feet, being about the same distance as the proposed segment of Roberson Lane. If the Planning Commission is receptive to the variance, staff recommends a partial approval to waive the paving requirement for Indigo Drive, which is the additional road length needed for the circuitous route, and which is mainly a driveway to the Workman property. Criteria 3 and 4 relate to not being materially detrimental to the public and being consistent with the intent and purpose of the law. Allowing paving variances just for the asking would be detrimental to the public and contrary to the law, but a partial variance for Indigo Drive would be only minimally so, given the small number of potential lots on it. So there were no comments received on the project. Staff recommends partial approval. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor for you. Give us what you've got, and let's see where we go from there.
Well, I'm not a public speaker. I'm kind of like those fainting goats, so if I keel over, just give me a minute. The parcel in question, as Mr. Patterson indicated, is split between, there was actually 40 acres there, and Grandpa Harrigan, who had the main place there on the corner of Cox and Soda Lake Road, when he passed, deeded the ground to his grandchildren in hopes that he would give them an opportunity to start their lives and have a place to build their homes. Wade bought Grandpa's place, and therefore his 10 acres went with that property, leaving the remaining 30 acres. Well, at the time of Grandpa's passing, all the kids pretty much were established, had their homes and everything else, so the lot has stayed vacant since the 1990s. Then we all got married and had kids, and so now our kids are wanting to start their lives and their homes and of such, and we're a very family-oriented group. I mean, as you know, Harrigans came to Fallon in the early 1900s, and there was quite a passel of them when they came, and so when they grew up and married, Fallon is, I mean, Edna, we had a little joke at dinner, or whenever we'd have family gatherings, the kids would come home and they'd be eating dinner, and Edna would, when Vicky and the boys got old enough to start dating, Edna would start asking, well, who you sweet on, you know, and everything else like that. Well, Vicky pops up one time, well, I like this Harmon boy. And Edna shakes her head. I'm sorry, honey, he's your cousin. So, you know, that was the big joke around town, was that Edna always had to make sure that none of the sweethearts were cousins and everything. So, but back to the matter, Edna Harrigan married Ted Workman, who lived down the ways on Soda Lake Road, and so we're all in that neck of the woods, and our families have stayed in that neck of the woods. The boys all are there. Vicky's there, her husband, her family. Liza actually is the first one to have decided that she wanted to build herself a home on the property, and so they subsequently built her home on a portion that would be a parcel. But at the time, it's still a 30-acre lot, so they went through the due diligence, and Wade DeDamasi, Liza's father, was told to go talk to the county about what he needed to do to have the driveway put in. So he went down, got the specs from the county, They hired Jason Homer of Dano Construction, and he did the road. They have turnouts for fire trucks to turn around at every area where the parcels, should they get subdivided, have. So there's a turnout for the fire trucks and everything else. And when the road was done, it was to county code. But Wade goes down and he maintains it and he grades it and everything else. So the pitch could be gone. So I understand where he's coming from on that. But it's better than most roads around there. So Mr. Patterson said that under our other options, there are other options that we wouldn't have to worry about having to pave the road, and that would be that we could put a second dwelling on there and not worry about splitting it up. The problem with that is Trey and his wife are not able to get financing with the parcel being set up the way it is. And our money tree doesn't exist at our house, so they're gonna have to take care of this on their own. So we're trying to help them out by giving them a piece of their great-grandfather's ground so that they can move forward with their life and raise their children. And the requirement for paving of Roberson Lane, the partial approval of that, gives me pause because the county doesn't maintain Roberson Lane even minorly right now. And to expect us to have to come up, and I work for A&K Earth Movers, so I have an idea on how much this paving project is going to cost. And for us to have to try to come up with the funds to pave a third of a mile for a road that isn't even taken care of now seems very inappropriate. I don't feel, because we're trying to better our kids' life by letting them have some of their ancestors' property to move forward on, that we have to pave a third of a mile for everybody and their mother to drive down and use. And nobody, I mean, I know Otts periodically bring a blade down and they'll blade it and everything else, but it's an astronomical expense these days, any type of paving. I am not opposed to the ordinance on and why it's in place. I understand. We've had property past us that have been subdivided that the roads were grandfathered in for whatever reason, and they are atrocious. But we're not trying to subdivide these lots down into anything other than a single family. And the additional cost to have to pave that third of an acre is going to make this cost prohibited for us or for the kids. I mean, that's pretty much it. It's our grandfather's ground. We want the great-grandkids to have it. We all get along, like Mr. Patterson said, you know, we could all just build a family commune on there, but we can't get financing to, you know. So that is the main thing, is that we have to be able to pull that parcel off in order for the kids to be able to get financing to move forward.
Okay, I'll open up to the board for any questions, comments.
Joe Frey for the record. My question would be for Dean. If I'm understanding this right, the recommendation for partial approval would still include paving the 1,300 feet of Roberson and then grading Indigo Road to the county's gravel road standards. Is that correct?
That's correct. Indigo's almost there as it is. It wouldn't take too much more work.
Jeff Goings for the record. I want to kind of go through this parcel map that I see up here. So as we're coming down Roberson Lane, and we intersect right there at Dillon, right there at that point, that lot that is to the northeast, that first lot, which is under Vicki J. Gunderson, is that a family member?
Yes, it's Vicky DiDamasi now.
Okay. The next lot to the east is the proposed lot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The next lot to the east is then owned by who?
If the parcel is pulled off, the next 2 lots would be owned by Neil Workman and Vicky DiDamasi.
Okay. So from my perspective here, that whole area from Roberson, where Roberson ties to Dillon, that whole area is owned by the family.
Yes, sir.
And that's the only residences that are on there or would ever be on there.
The only residents that are going to be off of Indigo.
Oh, well,
would
and,
be-
sorry, or that is the plan though, is at this
Yeah.
point, this would all be family?
Yes.
Yes, family.
Liza,
Okay.
who is Vicky and Wade's daughter, has a structure there, has a home there now, and then Trey and Hope. And then there is a dwelling on the lot that's Vicky J. Gunderson, but it accesses off, its driveway is off of Roberson Lane.
Okay, so that first lot that I was talking about, that lot's access comes off of Roberson?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other lots that are accessible off of Roberson Lane right now? I mean, once you get to Dillon, are there any other lots out there that are accessible, that would be accessed off of Roberson?
It's my understanding that the property between, to the north to Cox Road, that ground is BLM ground. So
it'd be the lot to the west then? Yeah,
To
right
the
there,
north.
right there, yes, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, the lot, or the ground between there and Cox Road is BLM ground, so I don't believe there would be any, I don't know anything about what BLM does with their ground.
So is that a residence right there at the corner?
That's
at the
Lakeview.
The southwest corner? Southwest corner of the 008-11316, right there, yes.
That's Sierra Way, I believe, and there are homes on Sierra Way, but they don't access, their driveways come off of Sierra Way, same with Lakeview, but then they shoot out to Roberson Lane, and most of the people to the east end of these roads utilize Roberson Lane to get access to.
So my next question is, Dean, are those properties that accessible off of Sierra Way, is that a paved road?
Is that a what road?
Sierra Way.
Oh, no, none of those roads are paved. They're not county maintained. They're not built to a standard. Those are probably good examples of why we have the law now. They were done long ago, and they weren't really built to a road standard at all.
So
and they're in pretty bad shape in some places.
Okay.
Some places people take care of them, some places they don't. But like Mrs. Workman said, that I don't think anybody takes care of Roberson, and a lot of people come and use it.
So I guess my next question would be then, if we were to look at this and do a gravel road from where Roberson ends now to Dillon to county standards, not paved, gravel, would that be compatible with everything else that is existing out there right now, or better?
It would certainly be better than what's there now. So I guess that would make it more compatible than it is now.
Can you say that again, Jeff, please? I didn't quite follow exactly what you were saying.
So what I'm saying is go back to the first parcel map. Yeah, back. Can keep going, right there. So it looks to me like on that parcel map, it looks like it says end of pavement is at the corner of Dillon and Roberson. And what they're saying is it's 1,320 feet from that point to, what is that, Indigo? Indigo. I'm sorry, I've been calling that wrong. Indigo. That's 1,320 feet. To the west of Indigo is Sierra Way, which is not paved. And so my question was, instead of paving that portion of Roberson, could they bring that portion of Roberson up to county specifications for a gravel road?
And Mr. Vice Chair, that's exactly what Mrs. Workman is asking for.
I'm sorry, what's that?
That, what you just described.
Oh, that is,
what
okay,
she
I
is
thought
asking
we
for.
were looking at the variance on Indigo as well. I follow. Okay, very good. Okay.
Yeah, she would like for it to be gravel road for Roberson and Indigo, which is a total of about 3,000 feet. And I got the impression, Mrs. Workman can correct me, that they would be willing to cover that cost.
Yeah, yes, I don't have a problem with improving Roberson. I don't really understand how the county comes to the decision on what roads they maintain and what roads they don't. If they base it on the amount of traffic that is being used, I mean, Roberson, that dirt part right there gets quite a bit of traffic. So my concern is I'm willing to do that part of it, but with the amount of traffic that does go down Roberson Lane all the time, how long will that last? And at that point, I mean, if we're going to be required, like, I did get a road maintenance agreement off of the county site, county road department site, and all of us on this parcel are more than willing to sign it and have it recorded that we will maintain Indigo. If we're required to do that on Roberson, my husband might have to sell the farm and just maintain the road because it's gonna take quite a bit to keep that road up to par. But can anybody explain to me how the county determines what roads they maintain?
Right. Mr. Vice Chair, just Mark Hyde for the record. I do want to make a statement based on experience as a developer. The reason why we have this condition is so that development will end up paying for roads. We're trying to improve the roads so that we have, because we now are introducing more traffic, and so a paved road mitigates the dust. And usually, if you're the first one there to develop, because you're creating now 3 lots, normally the condition would be you would have to pave Roberson and Indigo. You'd have to pave them both.
Yes, I understand.
And what staff
the
has
ordinance.
recommended is say, hey, we'll allow you just to pave the shorter one. Indigo is longer. That stretch there, if you had to pave that full stretch of Indigo, that's longer than the one on Roberson, right?
Correct.
It is. So all I'm trying to explain is that when we develop, and that's what you're doing, you're taking a big parcel of land, you're making 3 potential home sites. So they're asking us as developers to pay for a road. And so that's a condition now in the zoning that this normally would require paving on both of those.
But
I have a subdivision right now that I'm not doing yet because it costs so much to pave.
How many lots are in your subdivision?
That little subdivision now only has 4.
Okay,
And so the paving costs so much that I'm putting it off.
exactly.
I understand. But what's been thrown to you is a bone, saying, you
But-
know what, Kelly, you don't have to do both
No, I understand.
roads.
I was just asking a question, but, and I guess I better be quiet because I'm going to sink myself. Well, Mr. Patterson came up, with this, we could circumvent this whole thing and just have a community place, and we wouldn't have to go through with that. But how is that any different? We're still putting another home on this place, and we're still going to have Hope and Trey living there. But you guys are saying that we wouldn't have to worry about this if we did that, when all we're trying to do is put a little piece of line down there and allow our kids to get financing to build a home. I mean, we're not developers, we're farmers. And we want our kids to be able to move forward, and it's our family's ground. And I mean,
No, I have all
understand-
kinds of compassion for you, I really do.
I understand that, and
I
I
understand where you're-
understand this ordinance, you know,
Yeah.
I did take very much offense to Mr. Patterson saying just because I don't want to. That wasn't the
Yeah.
reason for the purpose, or for the request. It's just, we're wanting our children to be able to start their lives and build their homes, and we're being held hostage by 1/3 of an acre of a paving thing, which they're recommending that we can do gravel, and I'm more than happy to do gravel. I just don't, I guess I
But
just.
you have an economic advantage, I would say, Kelly, is because by doing that, by subdividing, that actually allows financing on that lot. And the way it is right now, it's very difficult for that
that's the point of
financing
it,
to
yeah.
be obtained unless they have a special lot. So you are increasing the economic value. And the county is saying, when you do that, we just all need to participate and help one another. So you need to pave part of this. So I know where Jeff's going, and all I wanted to insert here is that normally the conditions are when you subdivide like that, when you divide that up, you'd have to pave both of them. So,
All right.
Yeah.
I really wish we
And I'll
could
be
get
quiet.
off of that subdivide thing, because we're not subdividers. I mean, we're not trying to make a profit off of these lots at all. We're just trying to give our kids an opportunity.
Tammy Edgman for the record. One thing with the ordinance is to protect and to also follow guidelines. When you do one for one, you have to do for all. There's a lot of farmers out there that want to subdivide the property, and so once something is done like this for you, it opens it up to do it for everybody. So the board has to be very careful in following and doing the guidelines of the actual county and the planning department.
Again, we're not subdividing.
Mr. Chair, Joe Frey for the record. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to this too. I don't want to go down this slope. I made the mistake buying a 12-year-old a cell phone once, and now I've got a 12-year-old that won't let up on the fact that I bought the previous kid a cell phone. That said, I want to help you find a solution. Has the option been explored to get an easement from Neil's property to the east? And would that, from a planning perspective, if this was all done in-house privately, if Neil were to grant an easement onto this property, and that gave legal access to the parcels, could they circumvent all of the paving, graveling, all those requirements?
It would be in the same boat. You still have to get a road to each property, and each one is supposed to be paved. I sympathize with Mrs. Workman, but you've kind of hit the nail on the head about, you know, if you give the variance for one person, then how do you justify not giving it to all the other people? And I get the question at least every week. And so there needs to be the special situation. And if you find the special situation here, then, you know, then you have a reason for granting a variance. But anyway, that's just kind of how it works. Oh, someone was asking about how it gets onto the county maintenance. So we have a bunch of roads, some of which do not meet standard, but they're on our maintenance log. But for new roads, they basically have to be brought up to a county standard, and then the Highway Commission has to, I guess, agree to take them for maintenance. Joe's probably been involved with that before. He might have some more details.
Sorry, not used to being in this position. So would that special situation be that you have a family-owned you're accessing a family road is basically a driveway to all of those, that's all family owned, somewhere in the family. It's not sold outright. I understand where our point is here is that if we do make that division line, that makes it a valuable property. But I'm looking at this saying, okay, every one of those lots is a family member. The only people that are going to be using Indigo Road are family members. Does that qualify as one of your special?
I'll just answer that for you, which is special conditions is supposed to be a condition of the property, not a condition of the owner. And the reason for that is I know that this is the plan, but we don't have a restrictive covenant that says it will be family owned forever. Tomorrow, this could be sold to Mark Hyde to develop. And so the variance condition is supposed to be a condition of the land because, in the absence of some type of restrictive covenant, the ownership and the conditions on that property are completely subject to change. And I understand that that's not, we are Churchill County and we want to take care of our people and we can consider it. But the condition and the basis of having it be a part of the land is so that the next time you have someone ask, you'll be able to say, well, the condition of the land that was the basis for the variance was, say something along these lines, right, was the inability to gain an access easement across the shorter distance that would have been the preferred option. And instead, that created a situation that was unique and unfair to this particular owner. Hence why we've recommended the partial approval, which is that unfairness is what is the basis for the granting of the gravel road on Indigo. And then the basis for the paving on Roberson is because that is what everyone else would be required to do. If you just say, it's based off of a family circumstance or something like that, that'll be the situation that we come up with next time, especially in a town like this where, family farms are not, I'm not sure that that's going to be a situation that you're going to want to be in. But if you do want to find a basis, I would suggest that you be trying to consider the conditions of the land.
Is the development of the ground, if another home goes on this property, does the property taxes go up? Is that not county revenue?
It would. I'm not sure I understand how it's relevant, but yes.
Well,
if more homes were built on it, they would be assessed
yes,
according to the law.
So the property taxes would go up, which is a county revenue, which we're trying to help our kids, but by letting us develop on this ground and not making it cost prohibited, we're going to be increasing the revenue to the county. I realize this is just a small portion, but it still would be increasing the revenue to the county by the property taxes being increased from it being developed for a single home.
Board, any other comments, questions?
Where I'm at is that it's a slippery slope to go down, starting to issue a variance, because just like the first generation gave 40 acres and now the next generation wants to divide it up into 10 acres and the next generation might want to divide it up into 2 acres, and the county has a code and our job is also to uphold the code. And I think you just have to get creative outside of that by some sort of a land swap or trade or buyout or some sort of an exchange amongst the others, or comply with the paving requirement, which is an onerous requirement. Like you say, the money tree doesn't flow. And how do you afford to pave that?
You don't.
You don't. but
But when
it's
Grandpa
also.
gave that ground, he didn't give it to, he didn't cut it down. He had 4 grandchildren and he wanted to leave them some ground. Dirt was all Grandpa did.
Mhm.
That was what he made his livelihood on, so he wanted his grandkids to have it. And so his grandkids don't, but they're trying to give it to Grandpa's great-grandkids. It's not like, you say, we're not developers, we're just trying to build a home and move forward.
Mhm.
And a land swap,
It's complicated.
well, it is, if, some miracle, we were able to acquire Neil's parcel, and that would make it 20, would we be held?
At that point, I believe if you were over 20 acres, you would not be held to the requirement of paving.
Correct.
Is that
If
correct?
if it's 20 and a smidge, you don't have to pave. But that's for each new lot.
But I don't have any idea what Neil would feel about that, and this is, yeah.
With all due respect, Tammy Etchman for the record, as Joe stated, it isn't, we can't have our heartstrings pulled in ways for different circumstances. We have to follow a code, and that's what we're here to do.
I understand the code. I just, I mean, it's not gonna go forward if we have to pave. I mean, the paving's gonna cost more than the lot's worth. As well as Ms. Mark has said, yes.
So my understanding, if we acquired the 20 acres instead of just the 10, we wouldn't have to pave it.
So right now it's 30. If you got an extra. Can you turn that off? Oh, sorry. Right now it's 30. If you got an extra 10, you'd be able to split it into 2 20s without having to pave. So I think it was Vicky to the west has, it looks like 40. So maybe she could split with some of it. I think you were mentioning somebody to the east, same kind of thing.
Can you bring up that parcel map that has the 3 lines, please? Okay. The parcel that we're looking at is parcel 1. Liza is on the east side of parcel 2, so that one would be, it's an option. The middle one that would be between those two, that's the parcel that's open. So if we acquired that one and broke it off,
You would need 40 acres to start with, and then you could split it into 20s, and that, because each lot has to have 20 to avoid the paving requirement.
but Liza's is established already. So if we got Neil's lot, we would have 20 acres, and if we pulled it off of the 30,
If you had 20, it'd be leaving at 10. If you split 10, it would be leaving at 20, but either way, you're ending up with a 10-acre lot that would trigger the requirement. But if you picked up 10 acres from Vicky, that would make your lot 40 and hers 30, that both still not meeting needing to be paved, then you could split your 40 into 20s and still avoid the paving requirement.
I believe the only question I had, since it's being considered as a potential variance, partial approval, would you, I mean, is the applicant requesting to have that partial approval, or do you want to just have it as approved tonight? I just don't want the commission to approve half of a variance that you have no intention of doing.
And I think basically, let me come back to what you guys were talking about. Maybe Maybe we need to do is, potentially not vote on this as a variance or anything at this point right now and let you do some investigating and see what you can't come up with. I mean, is that potential? And I'm seeing a little nod there from Trey. Potentially, you know, there's some options there.
Mr.
Otherwise,
Vice Chair.
I think we would need to vote on the variance tonight, yeah.
I'm going
Or
to
deny.
say, whether we vote on the variance or not, I think if we vote on it, you know, approve or deny, it's going to continue to move forward in any way it's going to move. So I say we
May I?
go ahead and vote on it.
May I ask a question? My place of employment, I have access to grindings. If we did grindings rather than the paving part, it's better than gravel, but it's not as expensive as the paving. Would that be acceptable?
Asphalt millings?
I don't really know too much about road building, but I don't think that would meet the paving requirement. I think they use the millings perhaps as a gravel standard road, but it's also not really my decision to make either. That's just an opinion.
What's the width of that road, the asphalt?
20, it's 26, right? Yeah.
27?
26, yeah.
26.
A paved road standard is 26 feet wide.
I have a question for Dean. Joe Frey for the record. If we approved, followed the staff's recommendations of partial approval, and when further development occurs down the road, because I believe it will at some point, will we be back here for another variance? Because at that point, we'll be dividing a 10-acre lot into a 5-acre lot, and then the paving requirement will be requested again at that point?
I'm assuming you meaning the 30-acre Workman property?
Yes, any of them, really. At any point, if we issue a partial variance at this point and say, you do have to pave Roberson, but the other portion can be gravel or meet the county's gravel road specs, whether that includes asphalt grindings or not, I don't know. If that's the case, and then, yeah, if any further development occurs on those lots, we will be back here with the same request for a variance, or because the requirement for paving will exist for further parceling, correct?
I think mostly yes of what you're asking, but let me just cover the whole thing. So we know that there are 3 individuals who own that property, and each one wants their own 10-acre lot. The staff report has conditions that the variance only applies to this 30-acre lot, but you could do all 3 of the lots. You could split all 3 of the lots on this variance for that paved segment of Indigo, or whatever's approved.
Thank you.
Do any of you guys have asphalt millings on top of your road, your dirt? It's pretty compacted, right? I mean, it's barely, so.
Yeah, it makes a very good road, but whether that meets county specs, I don't know, and I don't believe it does actually, but I'm not 100% sure.
It would probably be county gravel road specs, but it won't meet an asphalt section.
Is there any public comment? Please press the button, state your name and your address, please. Yeah, press it, and it should turn green. The red light.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, hello.
Tim McCreary for the record. Totally different. There you go. Stay on. Kim McCreary for the record. Generally speaking, the count, You guys pretend like you're a developer. Excuse me. If anybody is crazy enough or has enough money to pave a road to do 10-acre parcels, you guys get to maintain it. You can't maintain the 800 miles of roads right now, according to the road guy, because he tells us that all the time. The best thing the county could do, sorry, is figure out the paving came because everything was 1-acre parcels, okay? Well, you can't do 1-acre parcels now because we don't have the city water and sewer. So all you have is well and septic. The county, this is at a different time, but you should start thinking about Plate 3 standard gravel roads on these bigger parcels, road maintenance agreements, and then the county takes an 80-acre parcel, divides it into 16 5s or 8 10s. Each one of them is worth $500,000. You don't have to do one thing. You don't have to deliver water, sewer. You don't have to maintain the road, and you collect the taxes on $8 million worth of property instead of paving it. And then now you got to maintain that road. It isn't all bad. Just something to consider in the future.
Hello, Dr. Forrest C. Bush. I live at a 5744 Indigo Drive. Paving the road would also lead me not being able to go to work since there's only one way and one way out of Indigo. We just also talked about my degree's in chemistry, so my PhD is in. So you, Mark, also talked about previously with the previous guy with the sawmill or that kind of stuff, that it would cause a vast amount of pollution and this kind of stuff, right? Well, obviously asphalt releases VOCs into those environments and that kind of stuff. So it's very contradictory and obfuscative of the way you're going about it. Also, I wouldn't be able to get to work, and then other people live on Roberson. How are they going to get to work? You're talking about, and you as a developer understand this, it doesn't happen instantly. I work on base. There are 4 people that do what I do. I do the weight and balance program. They're a weight and balance engineer. So there are only 4 people that do what I do. So you're talking about me not being able to get to work and not being able to facilitate NAS Fallon's mission, all because of a road. I have 3 cars on that road I take up and down, 2 which are classics. I have no problem going up and down that road with no issues. The problem I do have is all the ATVs and all the other things that are running up and down that road, tearing it up, and the county's gonna maintain it. If it were just dirt, it's very easy to patch that stuff over. We're not releasing any kind of toxins or any kind of things into the environment. We put a little bit of the gravel down. I think that's a way better idea and an easier solution and a much more rapid solution that's longer term, being an ag state and ag county, than paving the road. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Lauren Dudley, 5932 Dillon Road. When I first started hearing about all this, I wasn't really sure what to think, but after being in here tonight, I really wanted to emphasize on the maintenance of Roberson. That road is hammered. It's hard to travel. When I first heard about this, I thought, oh, we're getting a 30-acre parcel broken into 5-acre parcels. We're gonna have 6 new residences. That road needs to be paved. But knowing that it's a family trying to move in there, if they paved it, the county's gonna take over that pavement and maintain it and chip seal it like they do all the other roads, I would assume. So if they gravel it, that is a great idea, but who's gonna maintain it? That's what my opinion of this whole thing is. Roberson needs maintenance. I sit on my back porch and I watch ATVs zip up and down that road, and I can't sit there comfortably because the dust will just drift over and chase you off your porch. So my ultimate thought of the entire thing, who's going to maintain Roberson? And that's the consideration I'd like to put out there for the whole thing.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for either approval or denial of the variance.
Tammy Etchman for the record. Based on the information provided in this application and the staff report heard tonight, I move that the findings have not been met for conformance with the criteria found in CCC 16.08.090F, and therefore deny application for a variance from the parcel map paving requirement servicing APN 008-11357.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded we deny variance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Motion carries, and so the variance is not been approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Moving on. Item B, consideration of possible action regarding a special use permit application, SUP 25000015, for manufactured home dealership filed by Ken McCurry and Jessica Stanger of Creekwood Homes. The properties are located at 3981, 3977, and 3943 Reno Highway. Assessor's parcel number 008 411-40, 008-411-41, -42, consisting of 1.24, 1.97, and 1.13 acres respectively in the C1 zoning district. The applicants have proposed to establish a manufactured home sales lot. And would you state your name and address for us, please, for the record?
Kim McCrary, 3981 Reno Highway is the property.
Dean?
Thank you. Dean Patterson, Public Works and Planning for the record. So the applicant is requesting to establish a manufactured home sales lot. Creekside Homes currently operates at the corner of Roberson and US 50 on a small area of a larger parcel, and they plan to move the business to this location. The existing nursery business that is operating at the site now is a fully functional business site, so little change is needed for the proposed business. The site plan shows the proposed layout right there. Normal business hours are proposed, including a Saturday and often by appointment. One employee is planned at this moment, and minimal customer visits are anticipated. Manufactured home deliveries will be uncommon, but of course, growth will obviously increase all of this. The staff report reviews the special use permit criteria. Few concerns were identified. One minor issue was ensuring that the business presents a good image of the community. So manufactured home units should be stored in a neat row and placed outside of the 2 street setbacks. Another issue relates to traffic impacts. Access is primarily from Reno Highway on the north side and Arnold Way on the south side, although that, well, actually, I guess they're both gated. Staff inquired to NDOT for their thoughts on manufactured homes entering and exiting the highway at this location. No special changes were anticipated, such as like a turn lane or anything like that. They pointed out that wide and large loads have special requirements such as markings, escort vehicles, and other controls, and those should be adequate. The only likely change that they suggested is that they'll need to ensure that the approach apron uses the correct curve radiuses, and they don't know if it does or not. So any changes needed by NDOT will have to be made. No comments were received on this application. I need to call attention to an error in the motion, so as you're doing the motion, please watch for that. It is calling the use a manufactured home park, and it should say manufactured home sales lot. So please make that change during your motion. Staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dean, Mr. McCurry, you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty thorough. Thank you, Dean.
Board members?
Tammy Edgman for the record. During the staff report, we did discuss, and I think it would be a great option when you are, I don't know about the openings on the backside, on the south side of the property, but when bringing in mobile homes, there is Arnold Way, which would be a safe route so that there wouldn't be any concerns from any traffic or even the businesses nearby. That might be an option.
That's what we're planning on doing. Thank you.
The only thing, Kim, I don't know if you've read through the staff report and the recommendation, there's one of the conditions, item number 3, is that manufactured homes stored and displayed on site shall be kept in a single orderly row and shall not be located within the Reno Highway or Arnold Way setbacks. I personally don't feel like we should tell you how to organize your homes on your lot. What are your thoughts on that?
We're down on the corner of Roberson and the highway now, and it's so tight that he kind of looks a little like this, wonky now, but we're planning on, because we have the good frontage that we probably will try to line them up. If we don't and somebody doesn't like us, say something, but we're gonna try to organize it so that, like a car dealership would do, something, yeah.
This question's for Dean. If I were to remove that requirement, just so that it's not a requirement that ever comes down the road and bites us, there's no issue with that you would see? Like, I mean, if we took out the requirement that said you have to line your houses up in a row, do you see any issue with that?
That's not a direct code requirement. That's more of a, based on the master plan policy for our gateway corridors and wanting things to present a good image to the community. If you've been past some of the other manufactured home parks, like over in Mound House, they're kind of quasi-disaster areas sometimes. So that was the only issue there. I guess if the county, if the planning commissioners decided to remove it, then it wouldn't have a direct impact on like a code standard or anything like that.
Tammy Edgman for the record. I think it's important to keep it in there because it does state about the road setbacks within that. So I think he's really covering all bases as far as the fact of things being set in the setbacks or near the fence lines and property lines. Was that more for what you were looking at in that, Dean?
It covers both bases.
That's what I thought.
Manufactured homes are structures, but these are also going to be on wheels, so it kind of falls into a gray area. It just went with the keep it nice and orderly and looking nice perspective.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Who did I interrupt?
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I think, just sitting for the sake of discussion, the front would be like that, but then we have room behind that we might line them up differently, but you wouldn't see them because the ones in the front would be like that.
It's beneficial to you to utilize it that way.
It is.
Beneficial for you to utilize it that way for the highway frontage,
It is.
correct?
It is.
I would also have to agree that I think as a gateway, if you can organize them along there, that is definitely more eye appealing as you're coming into town. especially right there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and I probably misread that. When I read that single orderly row, it looked like a sausages, So I think, I don't think that's what Dean means. We just want it orderly. Yeah. So.
Any more questions? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Tammy Edgman for the record. Based on the information provided in the application and the staff report and heard tonight, I move that the findings have been met for the conformance with the criteria found in CCC 16.08.080, and therefore approve the application for a special use permit for a manufactured home sales lot at 3981 Reno Highway, APN 008-411-40 and APN 008-41141 and 008-41142. The approval is subject to the conditions as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion
Thank you
carries.
very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Consent agenda. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that, sorry. Number 11, update related to code master plan changes. Sorry, Randy.
Thank you,
need to
Mr.
cut
Vice
you
Chair.
out.
Randy Hines for the record. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Amos Akena. He actually joined us on June 2nd. Yeah, so he's our new planning technician. So Dean's getting him trained up. So you'll be starting seeing a lot of him in our meetings. So with that being said, again, we'll just remind you, June 24th at 6 p.m. we have our workshop, joint workshop with the board. June 24th. 6:30. Thank you, Diane. 6:30, June 24th. Again, we're going to be going over our industrial use table as well as descriptions, as well as our existing zoning map, or existing industrial zones within our zoning map, really defining which parcels we wanted to have I-1, I-2, I-3. We'll be sending out notifications to all property owners and 300 feet and 30 unique owners as per Churchill County Code for all the industrial parcels. So we will be sending those notifications out next week, Diane? Is that correct? Or this week?
I think it was this week.
So that way there's notification to the parcel owners that there's could be potential changes in their zoning. And as well as with pertinent code changes that go along with what we're planning. So just a reminder.
Have you anticipated rewriting our code in terms of pellet processing? Because I have some suggested language, so that's more clear.
Yes, sir. There will be along with the uses, right? We're going to really dive into descriptions or definitions of those uses. We do have a considerable amount of definitions. There's just a lot of uses that we don't have definitions in, and timber processing is one of them. We will end up really putting a definition to that, along with other ones that we don't have definitions, and that's just the clarity of the whole use, right? Is to have that clarity. And again, we want to continue that into the commercial and the ag and all the other stuff as well. Again, we're just working on the industrial right now.
So I think part of what we've run into here is especially that since our codes and all of our zoning has come full circle, it started a long time ago. And a lot of the things that are being proposed were not things we would have thought of 15 years ago, correct? Okay, so I'm wondering, do we really want to get into, calling each and every one of these things, fits this zone and doesn't fit another zone, and we come along 5 years from now and some new industry starts up and we're right back in the same boat again? I'm just throwing, being devil's advocate here just a little bit.
Yeah, we've been discussing the descriptions, right? And the more specific you are, the more you're going to miss, right? We did discuss that but it also, the more description you have, the more clarity you have. There's no discretion at that point, right? Now we're not catching, I think it's this, you guys think it's something else, right? That's what we're trying to get rid of, is the discretionary portion of it. So we know that the definitions and being more specific, we're not going to catch them all. We understand that. We know that. It was brought up in the workshop that if there was something that was really not in the description and we can't determine what it is, it would be an automatic SUP, and then we could address it later to be included into those descriptions, right? Does that make sense? So again, we know we're not going to catch everything because we're not. It's just not going to happen. We've been diving into a lot of code. We've been diving into a lot of descriptions. Really, I don't think we're that far off. We just need to add more to it, right? As you'll see when we get in there, staff sat there and we started. I went through and did have a long list, and it's pretty specific. And I think Dean had mentioned maybe it's a little too specific, but we're trying to build that clarity, right? And so we're gonna hash it out with Joe and Dean and Amos tomorrow afternoon and come up with a game plan and have something presented for you guys on the 24th.
Just one statement. Don't let up the requirements on roads. I mean, that statement that it would be easier to maintain a gravel road as opposed to paved road, give me a break.
Unfortunately, and I didn't mention it, but I think somebody did. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of roads out there that in the past we didn't have requirements, and that's why we have really not good roads out there. And again, we know in that situation, they're not developing, but they're creating parcels, and that's just the way the code sits. So whether it's gravel or asphalt, you can still maintain gravel roads, but it's just a requirement. We're just following code. That's all. So.
And I'll basically qualify my position on the thing is that we did have a family unit there. Okay, the actual comment was made by Dean is if they didn't need to divide that lot, nothing was going to happen with that road. And because they have to divide that lot to get financing, now they have to pave a road. So, and I've been down Roberson 1,000 times, and I would have to agree that probably 90% of what the problem is on that road is the SUVs and all the other stuff that blows up and down that road. So anyway, that was why I had a whole different opinion of this, so that everybody knew that.
I think Joe made it very clear that the conditions ought to be to the land, not the family.
100%.
So we can't guarantee perpetuity on that.
I get where everybody came from. I'm just stating my point. So, okay, moving on then. Okay, consent agenda. Is there any matters in this that we need to? I don't see anything in the consent agenda. So, is there anything we need to? We don't even need a motion, correct? Okay. Public comment. Imagine that. This meeting's adjourned.
Hey, you did a great job.